November 15th, 1959, Chicago, Regal Theater, 2,000 capacity, completely sold out. Louis Armstrong was on stage, playing his trumpet, the melody of What a Wonderful World. The hall was mesmerized. Silence, deep, respectful silence. Louis had closed his eyes, surrendering himself to the music. The sound of his trumpet floated through the air, soft, emotional. Every note told a story. The crowd held its breath, didn't want to break this moment. Right then, at the quietest part of the song, from somewhere near the left corner of the stage, a voice rose, harsh, angry, filled with hate. "Armstrong, you're a sellout, a clown pandering to white people." The hall froze. 2,000 people turned in shock, looked toward where the voice came from, a middle-aged man standing, face flushed red, finger pointing at Louis. "You're our shame, a smiling slave." Louis slowly lowered his trumpet, opened his eyes, looked at the man. From every corner of the hall, murmurs rose. People were angry, security guards prepared to move, but Louis raised his hand. A stop signal. Everyone waited. What would Louis Armstrong do? Would he respond with anger? Would he yell? Would he have the man removed? Nobody could predict. Because what Louis Armstrong was about to do would change everything that happened that night, and perhaps the entire life of that man. Before we dive into this powerful story of dignity triumphing over hate, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. What you're about to witness is one of the most profound examples of grace under pressure in music history. The information in this video is compiled from documented interviews, archival news, books, and historical reports. For narrative purposes, some parts are dramatized and may not represent 100% factual accuracy. We also use AI-assisted visuals and AI narration for cinematic reconstruction. The use of AI does not mean the story is fake. It is a storytelling tool. Our goal is to recreate the spirit of that era as faithfully as possible. Enjoy watching. To understand what happened that November evening at the Regal Theater, we need to go back several months. We need to understand the intense pressure Louis Armstrong was facing in the late 1950s, because what Louis did that night wasn't spontaneous. It was the culmination of years spent navigating impossible expectations while staying true to himself. July 20th, 1959. 4 months before that concert, Louis sat in his home in Queens, New York, reading newspaper clippings. The headlines were brutal. Is Louis Armstrong relevant in the modern jazz age? Young musicians criticize Armstrong's style. Civil rights leaders question Armstrong's silence. At 58 years old, Louis was being attacked from multiple directions. Young bebop musicians said his traditional jazz style was outdated. Civil rights activists said he wasn't militant enough. Some black intellectuals accused him of being an Uncle Tom who smiled too much for white audiences. These criticisms hurt Louis deeply. Not because they questioned his talent, he knew his abilities, but because they questioned his character, his choices, his approach to fighting racism. Louis had spent his entire life facing racism, from growing up in the poorest black neighborhood in New Orleans to dealing with segregated venues throughout his career. He'd fought racism every day, just not always loudly. Louis believed in fighting through excellence, by being so undeniably talented that people had to respect him, by opening doors for other black musicians, by showing the world that a black man from poverty could become internationally beloved through artistry and character. But in 1959, that approach was being questioned. Younger activists wanted immediate confrontational action. They wanted Louis to refuse to play for segregated audiences, to make political speeches, to use his platform more aggressively. Louis understood their frustration, shared their anger at injustice, but he also knew something they were still learning. That change happens through multiple approaches, some loud, some quiet, some confrontational, some through persistent excellence. August 5th, 1959. Louis was in a doctor's office receiving difficult news. Dr. Alexander Schiff reviewed test results with concern. "Louis, your blood pressure is dangerously elevated. Your heart is showing strain. The touring schedule is too much. You need to reduce performances significantly." Louis nodded but said nothing. Lucille, sitting beside him, spoke up. "Doctor, he won't slow down. I've been telling him for months." Dr. Schiff looked at Louis seriously. "If you don't reduce stress, your body will force you to stop." "And it won't be gradual," Louis finally responded. Doc, I hear you. But slowing down isn't an option right now. People need to see me still performing, still relevant. If I slow down, they'll say I'm finished. The doctor shook his head. Better they say you're taking care of yourself than you collapse on stage. That conversation haunted Louis for weeks. He knew the doctor was right. His body was exhausted. The constant touring, recording, television appearances, it was too much. But Louis felt he couldn't stop, because stopping felt like admitting defeat, admitting the critics were right, that his time had passed. September 10th, 1959. Louis was performing at the Apollo Theater in Harlem when something happened that shook him. A group of young black students protested outside, carrying signs. Armstrong sells out. Stop smiling, start fighting. Uncle Tom, go home. Louis saw the signs as he arrived for the evening performance. Each word felt like a punch. These were his people, young black Americans who should have been his supporters. Instead, they were calling him a traitor. That night's performance was technically flawless. Louis played brilliantly, but inside he was breaking. After the show, alone in his dressing room, Louis cried. Lucille found him. Baby, don't let them destroy you. You've given everything to this music, to your people. Louis looked at her with tears in his eyes. But what if they're right? What if I should have done more, been louder? Maybe smiling and playing beautiful music isn't enough anymore. Lucille took his hands firmly. Louis Armstrong, you listen to me. You've lived with dignity your entire life. You've shown millions of people that excellence transcends race. That art can change hearts. That's powerful. That matters. Don't let angry young people who haven't lived what you've lived make you doubt yourself. Louis wanted to believe her, but doubt lingered. Throughout September and October, Louis grappled with these questions. About his approach, about his legacy, about whether his lifetime of work mattered as much as he'd thought. October 20th, 1959, Louis received a call from Joe Glazer, his manager. Louis, the Regal Theater in Chicago wants you for November 15th. Big show. Great money. You interested? Louis hesitated. The Regal Theater was legendary in the black community, a historic venue where black performers could play to black audiences without the complications of segregation. But Louis knew what playing there in November 1959 meant. It meant facing his harshest critics, young black activists who questioned everything he stood for. Joe sensed the hesitation. Louis, you don't have to do this. We can pass. Louis thought for a moment, then made a decision. No. Book it. If people want to criticize me, they can criticize me to my face. I'll play the Regal. That decision would lead to one of the most significant moments of Louis Armstrong's career. But Louis didn't know that yet. He just knew he was tired of being questioned from a distance, tired of critics who'd never spoken to him directly. If young black Americans thought he was a sellout, he'd give them a chance to tell him face to face. November 1st, 1959, 2 weeks before the concert, Louis began preparing. But preparing wasn't about rehearsing music. Louis could play his repertoire in his sleep. Preparing was about mentally and spiritually readying himself for what might come. He knew the audience at the Regal would include supporters, but also critics, people who loved his music but questioned his politics, people who respected his talent but doubted his commitment to the cause. Louis decided he wouldn't change his approach, wouldn't try to be someone he wasn't. He'd do what he'd always done, play beautiful music, treat everyone with respect. And if people challenged him, he'd respond with honesty and dignity. November 14th, the day before the concert, Louis arrived in Chicago, checked into a hotel, rested. That evening, he had dinner with some old friends who lived in Chicago, musicians who'd known Louis for decades. One of them, a trumpet player named James, asked Louis directly, "Pops, are you ready for tomorrow? You know there's been talk. Some of the young cats are planning to make noise, challenge you." Louis nodded calmly. "Let them. I've got nothing to hide, nothing to apologize for. If they want to talk, we'll talk." James looked concerned. "But Pops, what if they try to disrupt the show? Embarrass you in front of everyone?" Louis smiled, that gentle Louis smile. "James, I've faced worse than angry young people. I've faced racism my entire life, real racism, the kind that could get you killed. Some kids with opinions, I can handle that." That confidence wasn't bravado. It was genuine, because Louis Armstrong had indeed faced worse, much worse, and survived, thrived, became legendary despite impossible obstacles. A few protesters didn't scare him. November 15th, 1959. The day of the concert. Louis woke early, ate a light breakfast, spent time with Lucille. They walked around Chicago, saw old neighborhoods, remembered earlier times when Louis had played there in the 1920s and 30s. At 5 in the evening, Louis went to the Regal Theater for sound check. The venue was beautiful, ornate, historic. The stage where Count Basie had played, where Ella Fitzgerald had sung, where Duke Ellington had performed. Louis felt honored to be part of that lineage. During sound check, the theater manager approached Louis nervously. "Mr. Armstrong, I need to tell you something. We've heard rumors that some activists might try to disrupt tonight's show. Protest. We've increased security, but I wanted you to know." Louis thanked him for the information. "I appreciate the heads up, but don't worry too much. If people want to protest, that's their right. We'll handle it." The manager looked relieved. "You're remarkably calm about this." Louis shrugged. "I've learned that getting upset before something happens is a waste of energy. Let's see what actually occurs, then we'll respond appropriately." At 7:30, doors opened. The audience began filling the Regal Theater. 2,000 people. A mix of ages. Older fans who'd loved Louis for decades. Middle-aged people who'd grown up with his music, and younger people. Some curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. Louis watched from backstage as the theater filled. Saw the diversity of the crowd, saw some young people wearing buttons that said "Jazz must be political," saw others wearing shirts with Malcolm X quotes, but he also saw elderly couples holding hands, families with children, people who just wanted to hear beautiful music. Have you ever had to face harsh criticism from people you thought would support you? How did you handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments. At 8 o'clock, the lights dimmed. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Regal Theater is proud to present a living legend, the ambassador of jazz, Mr. Louis Armstrong." The crowd erupted. Despite all the controversy, despite all the criticism, the majority of the audience was thrilled. Applauding, cheering, standing, Louis walked onto the stage with his trumpet, waved to the crowd, that famous Satchmo smile, and began to play. The first song was "When the Saints Go Marching In." Upbeat, joyful, the crowd loved it, clapping along, some dancing in their seats. Louis felt the energy, felt the connection. Maybe tonight would be okay after all. The second song was "Hello, Dolly," another crowd favorite. People sang along. Louis's performance was flawless. His trumpet sang. His voice, that distinctive, gravelly voice, filled the theater with warmth and joy. For 45 minutes, everything was perfect. The audience was engaged, supportive. Even the skeptical young people seemed to be enjoying the show. Louis began to relax. Maybe the rumors were just rumors. Maybe nobody would actually disrupt the performance. Then Louis announced the next song. "This next one is special to me. It's called What a Wonderful World. I hope you enjoy it." The theater settled into anticipatory silence. This song was newer, more emotional. People wanted to hear it properly. Louis brought his trumpet to his lips, began playing the opening notes, soft, gentle, beautiful. The melody floated through the silent theater, every person completely focused on the music. Louis closed his eyes. Let the music flow through him. The song built slowly, each note carefully placed, each phrase perfectly executed. It was one of Louis's finest performances of this song. The audience was transfixed. Some people had tears in their eyes. This was why they'd come, to experience this level of artistry, to be moved by music. Louis reached the bridge of the song, the quietest, most intimate part, his trumpet barely above a whisper, creating a moment of profound beauty and vulnerability. In that moment of near silence, from near the left side of the stage, a voice exploded into the space, loud, angry, shocking in its intensity. "Louis Armstrong, you're a sellout. Please subscribe if this story is gripping you. What happens next will show you the true measure of Louis Armstrong's character and wisdom." The effect was instantaneous and devastating. 2,000 people gasped. The music stopped. Louis opened his eyes, looked toward the voice. The man was standing about 15 rows back, left side, near the edge of the seating area. Middle-aged, African-American, wearing a suit, face twisted with anger, pointing at Louis. "You're a disgrace to black people, a clown who smiles for white audiences. You make us look weak." The theater erupted in response. Some people yelled at the man, "Shut up! Get out!" Show some respect! Security guards began moving toward him, but the man kept going. You play their game, Armstrong. You don't fight. You just grin and play your horn like a good little performer. We need fighters, not entertainers. The tension in the theater was explosive. People were standing, some moving toward the man, others shouting. The security guards were almost there, ready to remove him forcefully if necessary. Louis stood on stage, trumpet still in his hand, looking at the man. Everyone waited for Louis's reaction. Would he be angry, hurt? Would he have the man thrown out? Would he defend himself? Louis did something nobody expected. He raised his hand, not in anger, just a calm gesture. Hold on, he said into the microphone. His voice wasn't loud, wasn't aggressive, just clear and steady. Wait, everyone, please wait. The security guard stopped. The crowd quieted slightly, confused. What was Louis doing? Louis looked directly at the man. Sir, you want to say something to me. I'm listening. The whole theater is listening. Say what you need to say. The man, surprised that Louis wasn't having him removed, seemed emboldened. You're an Uncle Tom, Armstrong. You play for segregated audiences. You smile when you should be angry. You entertain when you should be fighting. Louis nodded slowly. I hear you. Is there more? The man hesitated. He'd expected to be thrown out, expected Louis to get defensive. This calm response was unexpected. Yes, there's more. Young black people are tired of your generation's approach. We're tired of being patient. We're tired of waiting for white people to give us respect. We need to demand it, and you, with your platform, you should be leading that fight. But instead, you're playing nice, making white people comfortable. That's betrayal. The theater was completely silent now, every person riveted by this confrontation, watching to see what Louis would do. Louis set his trumpet down on a stand beside him, walked to the front of the stage, closer to where the man stood, and spoke. What Louis said in the next few minutes would become legendary, repeated for generations, taught in classes, referenced in books, because Louis Armstrong was about to demonstrate what true wisdom looks like. Sir, I don't know your name, but I want you to know I hear your pain, I hear your anger, I understand your frustration, because I've felt it too, every day of my life. The man looked surprised. This wasn't the response he'd expected. Louis continued, You think I don't know about fighting? Let me tell you about fighting. I was born in the poorest black neighborhood in New Orleans. My mother was so poor she sometimes had to trade her body for food to feed me. I was arrested at 11 years old, sent to a reform school. That's where I learned trumpet. Because even in jail, I found a way to create something beautiful. The theater was absolutely silent, every word landing with impact. You think I don't know about racism? I've been called every name you can imagine, been denied entry to restaurants, hotels, had to use separate bathrooms, separate water fountains, been threatened, been beaten, all because of my skin color. So don't tell me I don't understand the fight. Louis's voice remained calm, not angry, not defensive, just truthful. But here's what I learned. There's more than one way to fight. Yes, some people need to march, to protest, to demand change loudly, and I respect that, I support that, but my way of fighting is different. I fight by being so excellent they can't ignore me, by showing them the world that a black man from nothing can become beloved worldwide, by opening doors for every black musician who comes after me. The man in the audience had gone quiet, still standing, but no longer shouting. You call me an Uncle Tom? Let me tell you what I've done. I've refused to play venues that wouldn't let black audience members sit where they wanted. I've walked away from thousands of dollars because I wouldn't perform for segregated crowds. In 1957, when the governor of Arkansas blocked black students from entering school, I publicly called out the President of the United States, risked my career to say what needed to be said. Louis paused. Let that sink in. But I don't do it your way. I don't do it with anger. Because I learned something. Angry black men scare white people. They dismiss us, call us dangerous. But a black man who creates beauty, who shows excellence, who treats everyone with dignity, that man changes hearts. That man makes it harder for people to hate. That's power. Different from your power, but power nonetheless. The man in the audience sat down slowly, the anger seeming to drain from him. Louis continued, You want to know why I smile? I smile because music brings joy, and joy is revolutionary. I smile because refusing to let racism make me bitter is a form of resistance. I smile because showing white people that black people are human, are talented, are worthy of respect, that changes the world one person at a time. Louis's voice grew softer but more intense. And let me tell you something else. Every time I play, every time I perform, I carry the weight of every black person in America. I know that if I fail, if I act angry or unprofessional, white people will say, oh, or see, that's how they all are. So I carry that burden. I represent us all, every single day. Don't tell me that's not fighting. Don't tell me that's not exhausting. Don't tell me that's easy. The theater was completely silent. People were crying, including the man who'd shouted. Louis walked back to his trumpet, picked it up. Now, I'm going to finish this song, and you can stay and listen, or you can leave. Either way, I respect your right to disagree with me. I respect your anger. I just ask that you also respect that my way, while different from yours, comes from the same place. We both want black people to be free, to be respected, to be safe. We just have different approaches, and maybe, just maybe, we need both. Louis brought the trumpet back to his lips and began playing What a Wonderful World again. From the beginning, the notes were even more beautiful now, even more emotional, because they carried the weight of everything Louis had just said. The entire theater listened in reverent silence. When Louis finished, the silence continued for 3 full seconds. Then the man who'd shouted stood up and started clapping. Slowly at first, then with increasing intensity. Tears streaming down his face. Within seconds, the entire theater was on its feet, applauding, not just for the music, but for the wisdom, for the grace, for Louis Armstrong's ability to respond to hate with truth and dignity. The standing ovation lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes of 2,000 people expressing their gratitude, their respect, their understanding that they'd witnessed something profound. After the concert, as people filed out, the man who'd shouted approached the stage entrance. Security initially tried to stop him, but Louis, seeing him, said, "Let him through." The man came backstage, tears still on his face. "Mr. Armstrong, I don't know what to say." Louis put a hand on his shoulder. "You don't need to say anything. I understand." The man shook his head. "No, I do. I need to apologize. I was angry. I took it out on you. But you? What you said, it made me understand something I didn't before." Louis smiled gently. "What's your name, son?" "Marcus. Marcus Johnson." Louis nodded. "Marcus, how old are you?" 32. Louis thought for a moment. "So, you were born in 1927. You grew up in a different world than I did. Things are changing faster now. Your generation has opportunities my generation fought to create. Your anger is justified. Your impatience is understandable, but don't dismiss those of us who paved the way just because our methods were different." Marcus nodded, overcome with emotion. "I see that now. I see what you've done, what you've sacrificed. I'm sorry I couldn't see it before tonight." They talked for another 20 minutes. About fighting racism, about different approaches, about how change happens through multiple strategies, not just one. When Marcus finally left, he said something Louis never forgot. "Mr. Armstrong, I came here tonight hating you. I'm leaving as your biggest fan. Not because of your music, though. It's incredible, but because you showed me what strength really looks like. Thank you." After Marcus left, Lucille came to Louis. "Baby, what you did tonight, that was—" "I don't have words." Louis sat down heavily, suddenly exhausted. "Lucille, I'm tired. So tired of defending myself, of explaining, of carrying this burden." Lucille sat beside him, held his hand. "I know. But tonight, you changed that man's life. Maybe others too. That matters." Louis nodded. "I hope so, because I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. Fighting on every front. It's wearing me down." In the months and years that followed, the story of that November night at the Regal Theater spread throughout the black community and beyond. Marcus Johnson became a devoted Louis Armstrong fan. He attended every concert Louis played in Chicago, brought his family, introduced his children to Louis's music. But more than that, Marcus changed his approach to activism. He remained passionate, remained committed to fighting for civil rights, but he developed a new appreciation for multiple approaches, for understanding that the loud fighters and the quiet resistors were both necessary. In 1968, when Louis was hospitalized with serious heart problems, Marcus was one of many who sent flowers and letters. His letter read simply, "Thank you for teaching me that strength comes in many forms. Thank you for showing me that grace is not weakness. Thank you for changing my life." When Louis Armstrong passed away in July 1971, Marcus Johnson attended the funeral. He stood in the back, crying. Afterwards, he told anyone who would listen about that November night in 1959. "I was a fool," Marcus would say. "I thought Louis Armstrong was a sellout. But he was a warrior. He just fought differently than I did, and his way worked. Look at his legacy. Look at how many people he influenced. Look at how he changed the world by refusing to let hate make him hateful. That's power." The story became legendary in jazz circles and civil rights history, a perfect example of how responding to anger with wisdom can transform not just a moment, but entire lives. Music educators use the story in classes. This is what it means to have integrity, to stay true to your principles even when attacked, to respond to criticism with grace rather than defensiveness. Your Louis Armstrong could have had that man thrown out, could have responded with anger, but he chose understanding, and in doing so, he won not just that man's respect, but everyone's. Today, the Regal Theater building in Chicago still stands, though it's no longer used as a performance venue. But there's a plaque outside. It reads, "On this stage, November 15, 1959, Louis Armstrong demonstrated that the greatest strength is not in dominating your critics, but in understanding them, in responding to hate with wisdom, in showing that grace and power can coexist." That November evening teaches us something crucial, that how we respond to criticism reveals more about us than the criticism itself. That anger can be met with understanding, that hate can be countered with love, that the greatest victories aren't won through force but through wisdom, dignity, and unwavering commitment to being your best self, regardless of how others treat you. Louis Armstrong lived that truth his entire life. That night at the Regal Theater was just one example, one moment in a lifetime of moments where Louis chose grace over anger, understanding over resentment, wisdom over ego. Marcus Johnson lived to be 83 years old. He passed away in 2010. At his funeral, his children shared a story. Every year, on November 15th, their father would play Louis Armstrong records, would tell them about that night, about how Louis Armstrong changed his life by refusing to be what Marcus expected, by being better than anger, by showing a different kind of strength. The last thing Marcus said before he died, according to his daughter, was, "I wish I could tell Mr. Armstrong one more time, thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me that night. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for showing me what a wonderful world looks like when people choose love over hate." That's Louis Armstrong's legacy, not the trumpet playing, magnificent as it was, not the records, though they're timeless, but the example of how to live with dignity, how to respond to hate with wisdom, how to change hearts not through force but through excellence and grace. The lights at the Regal Theater may be dark, the building may be silent, but the lesson from that November night echoes forward through time, touching everyone who hears the story, reminding us all that the greatest power is not in shouting down your critics, it's in understanding them, in responding with such grace and wisdom that you transform them from enemies to friends, from haters to fans, from people who want to tear you down to people who want to lift you up. Thank you, Louis Armstrong, for the music that made us dance, for the joy you brought to millions, but most of all, for showing us how to be strong without being cruel, how to be principled without being rigid, how to fight injustice while refusing to let it make us unjust. That November night, that angry man, that perfect response, forever teaching us, forever inspiring us, forever reminding us what true greatness looks like, not in never being challenged, but in how we respond when we are, with grace, with wisdom, with love, always with love, forever.